Okay, so as part of the previous video, we said, hey, if I have either of these kinds of pairs of information, I have 3 sides in one triangle that match with 3 sides in another, I can say SSS. I have 2 pairs of sides that match, one pair of sides per triangle, and the angle that is between the 2 sides that I know, yeah, I'm able to say side angle side, SAS. We'll say that these 2 triangles actually always have to be congruent, even if I don't happen to know all 6 pieces, all 3 sides and all 3 angles. These postulates that you dealt with and that you saw in that first IXL section require you to know more about sides than you do about angles. Well, as it turns out, we do have, and I'm just skipping through a few questions that you guys will be seeing eventually, we do have a couple of ways to say this, even if we just happen to know more about angles than we know about sides. So, same idea as before. We're only talking angles and sides. We're only using the letters A and S over and over again, and now we see each of these, ASA and AAS. I know 2 angles in one side. As it turns out, the only difference between these 2 postulates is which angle we know, or rather which side, we know. In angle, side, angle, just like we saw in side, angle, side, that angle needed to be dead center. It needed to be in between the 2 S's. It needed to touch both sides at the same time. This is the opposite of that. I am now saying there happens to be a pair of angles, one here, that I have a match in my other triangle. So one pair of angles meeting at point G, these other pair of angles, B and M, that I know are congruent. If I'm going to use the angle, side, angle congruence postulate, then I need the side that I know to connect those 2 angles together. It has to touch both of those corners. Well, I've only got one option in these triangles right now. I have to say that here's the side in triangle BRG, here's the side in MKG, that connects the 2 angles I know. And that's why I'd be able to say that these are congruent by ASA. That is slightly different from what you see below, angle, angle, side, where this time, these 2 angles don't have the side between them that I know. That side is just chilling off on the side a little bit. No pun intended. But what this means is, let's say, well, for example, in this problem, I do know that I have 2 angles that are the same because they're vertical angles. Yay. And now, let's use the same letters that we did before. Let's say I know that angle B is the same as angle M. Great. Now I have 2 angles, 2 angles in each triangle that have a match in the other triangle. If I'm going to use angle, angle, side to show that these 2 triangles are the same, I'm just going to need to make sure that the side that I know is not the side that connects them. I'm not allowed to use, in this triangle on the left, side BG, just like I did earlier. It would have to be one of the other 2. Now, if it happened to be this side, RG, that I knew, it's only touching the angle down here marked with 1, it's not touching the other angle, so it's not between them. It is actually still very important, though, to pay attention to where that side is marked. If I just, recklessly go to this other triangle and say, hey, here's another side that's got the same length as RG. And it's also not the one that connects the 2 angles that I know. But please notice, in the triangle on the left, this right here is connecting to the angle marked with 1. This side connects to the angle marked with 1 curve. As I label it over here, this side connects to the angle marked with 2. That's not the same. Those 2 triangles would not, in fact, be congruent. If I need these to be congruent by AAS, I need that 3rd side that I know, or I need that only side that I know, to be in a place that matches. It's connecting the angle that's marked with 1 curve to the angle that's blank. And in this other triangle now, I see that same property. So when we go to use ASA and AAS, we're saying, yep, I happen to know more about sides than I do about angles. But now I also have that extra thing of I need to be careful about where exactly that side is that I know. Because if it turns out that I have something like this, well, one of my triangles looks like it wants to be angle, side, angle. The other one looks like it wants to be angle, angle, side. Those 2 couldn't be the same. So we're going to have to be consistent when we go into our next IXL section as I exit out of the SSS and SAS and go to our next one. But you'll see that these questions are set up the same way. Here are two triangles that I want to say are congruent by angle, side, angle. And all I need to look for is which two actually match. Each of these three triangles has an angle that's marked with one curve and an angle that's marked with two curves. The trick here, of course, is one of those three sides that you see, one in each triangle, isn't marked the same as the other two. So I see line SR chilling there. That's marked with 2, whereas my other ones, IJ, ED, in whatever order I'm going to use, they're just marked with 1. Those are the two that I'm going to want to focus on. So sorry, triangle SRT, not right now, just these others instead. I want to be able to say which of these triangles is the same, so let's go ahead and start with IKJ or IJK. Let's go alphabetical order, why not? Again, consider, as you're naming these things, how you've begun this problem. We started at angle I, which was marked with one curve, and we said that was congruent to this triangle was IJK. So I started at angle I, marked with one curve, and proceeded down the line marked with 1 dash. If I do the same thing over here, I need to start at the angle marked with one curve. My first letter here is going to have to be an E. I will then proceed down the side that is marked, proceed down the side that I have with only one marking on it, and get to my next point at point D, and then complete the triangle. So again, there are some things that you will need to worry about as you go through problems like this, as you're like, all right, how am I supposed to tell which of my shapes is going to be exactly the same? With something like this, if the only difference that I see is that one of my labels is off, that makes it pretty easy to say which other two have to be the same. If you have a question more like, let's say this one, it's the same idea with 2 angles here, or 2 dashes here, so I'd have to use the other 2 instead. And again, with some practice, I'm hoping, UST, why not? I start with the angle marked with 1, I then proceed to the angle marked with 2. Well, I'm not using this triangle because that side doesn't match the others that I know, but I'll say the same thing here. Start with the angle marked with 1, proceed to the angle marked with 2, and complete the triangle. So just consistency is all we need for these kinds of questions. Another one here with ASA, I'm going to answer this fairly quickly just so we can move on to more challenging stuff and the things that will actually try to confuse you, which is what happens when we throw in extra information where it's not exactly matching. You saw a couple of examples like this. I'm doing a very poor job right now of explaining it as I wait for one of these things to show up. Here's one of them. I want to know which of these 2 triangles are congruent by the AAS theorem. And as you'll notice, in every single one of these triangles, the side that connects those 2 angles, I don't know. I don't have markings on that side. The only thing I do know is that each one of these does have a single side that is marked. Now, there is a little bit of a giveaway in terms of the number of marks here. But let's talk about why else this triangle can't be congruent to the others by AAS. In the triangle in the middle, notice which line I just circled that was marked. And notice that inside that circle I put there, I see the angle that's marked with 2 curves. In my rightmost triangle, I circle that same side marked with 2 marks, and I again circled the angle marked with 2 curves. The angle that's marked in my left triangle over here connects to the angle marked with 1 curve. That's not included in the circle in my other 2 triangles, right? Like I see angle C is here, I see angle K is here. They're not included in the circle. So even though all 3 of these triangles have 2 angles and a side that does not connect them, that still doesn't mean I can just pick any ones I want. I have to make sure that the information is consistent. And again, however you name one triangle is fine. It can be done in any order. I could have said JIK, I could have said IKJ. All that will impact is the order that you need for your second triangle. We started with angle K. Well, now I've got to start with angle C because they're each marked with 1. I proceeded to angle J. Now I need to proceed to angle E because it's the one marked with 2. and complete my triangle. And just for extra checking, JI is the side that I know here. It's the second and third letters that you see in this statement right here. And the side that I know on this one connects E and D, second and third letters of this one as well. We know that we have this right. Again, your goal is going to be to get an 85 on these. Just make sure that you are consistent with understanding, okay, which one of these is not like the others. Don't just use your eyes. Don't just say, hey, this one looks bigger than the other two, so it can't possibly be right. No, the reason why it can't be right is because it is marked differently from the other two shapes. Because I see a 1 dash here, whereas I see 2 here. And as we said before, this side touches the angle marked with 2 curves. This side touches the one marked with 1 curve. This one touches the one marked with 1 curve. So yeah, that's all we've got. So again, please be consistent. Please be understanding of I need to go through and look at all of these things. But at the end of the day, it is just about putting some letters in the correct order. And one last time, please do not just say, oh, you know what? H was the point at the bottom, which means I'll match that with point P, and then I'll go to Q, and then I'll complete it in the top right corner at R. That's a problem. Because if I'm starting at H, notice that P is not labeled in the same way. They're in the same position, I suppose. They're each at the bottom, quote unquote, of these triangles, but they don't match with one another. Wherever I see the letter H, I shouldn't see the letter P. I should see the angle that is marked the same way. So again, it's not just a matter of, oh, these two things happen to look really similar. The order that I put these letters in will impact whether I get this question right or wrong. Here's what the correct answer would look like, QPR. Let's say I did it the wrong way. Yeah. Even something as simple as that. And okay, it said HIJ instead of HJI. Well, the most important thing that you see is which letter came first. H comes first in the triangle on the left. Q needs to come first in the triangle on the right. Again, each piece needs to have its specific match based on that statement. So please be careful with it. Even if you pick the correct 2 triangles, it is still easy for you to mess up the order of the letters. So please be consistent with that. In addition to these 2 sections, I am actually then going to ask you to try one more. So we already talked about K1 of SSS and SAS. K3, this is just ASA and AAS. Well, then there's K5, which says, let's throw them all together. And these kind of questions you can see are going to be a little bit different. This one says, hey, I want to know why these 2 triangles are congruent. Now I have my choices that I need to make, okay? In each of these cases, I know 2 sides, 2 angles rather, and the side that connects them. In this one, I don't know if I have enough information right now, right? All of these things, AAS, SAS, ASA, SSS, they each involve needing to know 3 pieces of information in each triangle. And right now, in this triangle right here, for example, I only have 2. I have side KM, I have side KN. I don't have any other angles, I don't have any other sides. So you might be thinking, there's not enough information to prove these triangles are congruent. Sure, there's not enough information that is labeled. But we do have to make sure that we remember there are certain things we're allowed to say even if it's not given. Like, yes, I'm told that lines PK and MK are marked in the same way. I'm told that lines NK and QK are marked in the same way. What I'm not told, but what I'm allowed to say, is that I've got a few lines here that all intersect at point K. And what that means is, where these 2 lines intersect one another, I've got a pair of angles across from one another that I should know are the same. I am allowed to put in a pair of vertical angles even without the benefit of additional given information. I know those 2 angles have to be the same. And so it does turn out that in each of these triangles I have a pair of sides, a second pair of sides, and an angle between them that connects the 2. And since I have that same match in both triangles, these are congruent by SAS. So, similar ideas. Make sure that you are putting in any information that you are able to come up with on your own. Sometimes you'll be able to do that. Sometimes, let's say these 2 triangles were not connected. well then no, I can't prove that they're congruent. But I will always have the option of saying, you know what, those two angles are the same. And then, same idea. This time it's not telling you which congruent statement you're going to use, but just be careful. I'm less concerned about this section. This is sort of an extra practice kind of idea. So if you manage to get through K1 and K3 okay, then great. Try this last one. It'll help you with where we're going to resume next week. Otherwise, just again, try those other first two. Make sure you're able to get through understanding how those things are supposed to look, why it is that only two of them are able to match, and what happens instead of knowing more about sides than I do about angles, what happens when I know more about angles than I do about sides. So get some practice with this as well. That's going to be the only things I ask you guys to do between now and when we resume next week. We're not going to do any proofs this week. We're going to be using these ideas in our proofs, but for now, let's just familiarize ourselves with understanding when we have that match, when we have, here's my three sides that are the same in each triangle, boom, these triangles have to be the same. Good luck with that, and please email me if you have any questions whatsoever.